So there's Jake Morrison, standing in the docking bay of the Stellar Fortune, staring at what the galaxy's most prestigious freight company calls a state-of-the-art vessel, and trying very hard not to laugh. The ship looks like someone welded together 3 different junkyards, and then polished the outside real nice. But hey, a job's a job, and this one pays in actual galactic credits instead of the usual exposure and valuable experience that comes with being the only human in a 5-system radius. Captain Threndak clicks his way down the loading ramp, all 6 legs moving in that unsettling synchronized pattern that insectoid aliens seem to love. He's got the posture of a guy who irons his underwear and alphabetizes his spice rack. Technician Morrison, he says, pronouncing it like he's reading from a manual. Welcome aboard the Stellar Fortune. I trust you understand the significance of this opportunity. Oh, absolutely, Jake says, hefting his toolbox. Very significant. Much wow. Threndak's antennae twitch, which Jake has learned means confusion. Good start. The ship's interior is somehow worse than the exterior. There are pipes running along the ceiling that seem to go nowhere, panels held shut with what looks suspiciously like chewing gum, and a persistent humming noise that Jake's pretty sure machinery isn't supposed to make. They pass by the engine room, and Jake catches a glimpse of Chief Engineer Glorp, who is exactly what you'd get if Anxiety and Jello had a baby. The gelatinous blob creature is literally quivering while checking readouts, muttering something that sounds like prayers. This is Navigator Pip, Threndak says, gesturing to a bird-like alien who's currently pecking at a keyboard with genuine terror in her eyes. She looks up, feathers ruffling nervously. Oh good, you're here, Pip chirps. Does your species believe in omens? Because I've been seeing a lot of bad ones lately. A lot. So many. Pip, please, Threndak sighs. Technician Morrison, let me be absolutely clear about your responsibilities here. He stops walking and turns to face Jake, with all the severity of a disappointed parent. The Stellar Fortune has been operating at peak efficiency for 300 years, using time-tested procedures and protocols. Your job is simple maintenance. Follow the manual. Follow Glorp's instructions. And above all else, do not, under any circumstances, touch anything that doesn't explicitly require touching. Jake blinks. I'm a maintenance technician. Touching things is kind of the whole deal. What the captain means. Glorp oozes over, somehow sweating despite being made entirely of translucent goo, is that every system on this ship is perfectly calibrated, perfectly balanced. The slightest alteration could cause catastrophic cascading failures. We've seen it happen with your kind before. Humans have a tendency to, how do I put this delicately, break absolutely everything they interact with. That's not delicate at all, actually, Jake mutters. The engine, Glorp continues, his voice taking on a reverent quality, has been running using the exact same parameters since the ship's maiden voyage. Same temperature, same pressure, same sacred rhythms. It is a temple of mechanical perfection, and you will treat it as such. Jake glances back toward the engine room, where something is now making a sound like a cat being strangled by accordion. And that noise is normal? That, Glorp says with the confidence of someone deeply in denial, is the song of optimal performance, music to my auditory receptors. Right, Jake says slowly. So, just to clarify, you want me to do maintenance, but not actually maintain anything. Exactly. Threndak's antennae perk up. I'm glad we understand each other. You'll find the maintenance manual in your quarters. It's only 4,000 pages, all essential reading. We'll expect you to have memorized the first 1,000 by end of cycle. As they walk away, Pip sidles up to Jake and whispers, I've been checking escape pod inventory twice a day for the last 6 months. Just so you know, they're all functional. I've tested them. Repeatedly. That's comforting, Jake says. It really shouldn't be. Pip chirps nervously, then scurries off. Jake stands there in the corridor, listening to the symphony of mechanical distress echoing through the ship, and thinks about the job posting that called this a prestige opportunity with a respected crew operating cutting-edge technology. He looks down at his toolbox, then back toward the engine room where something just went clunk in a way that metal definitely shouldn't clunk. 300 years of optimal efficiency. Sure. And Jake's a Martian princess. This is going to be interesting. 3 days into the job, and Jake has discovered that optimal efficiency is apparently code for, we have no idea what we're doing, but it hasn't exploded yet, so let's not jinx it. The engine noise that Glorp insists is normal operational harmony has progressed from strangled cat to what sounds like a whale trying to beatbox, and everyone's just going about their business like this is fine. Jake's in the mess hall, poking at something the food synthesizer claims is oatmeal, when the ship shudders, Not a little vibration. A full-on something just went very wrong shudder. What was that? He asks. Pip looks up from her own meal, eyes wide with that special brand of panic she seems to carry everywhere. Oh, that's just the engine doing its afternoon wobble. Happens every day at 1300 hours. Very punctual, very concerning. The engine wobbles. On a schedule. Has for the last 80 years. She chirps, stabbing at her food with renewed anxiety. We've logged it in the maintenance records as unexplained rhythmic oscillation. There's a betting pool on which day it'll stop being rhythmic. Jake puts down his spoon. And nobody's thought to maybe investigate why a starship. Engine is wobbling? Oh, Glorp investigated. Pip leans in conspiratorially. Back in year 247. Spent 6 months running diagnostics. Concluded it was part of the engine's natural life cycle. Then he had a small breakdown and we don't talk about it anymore. Down in the engine room, Jake finds Glorp standing before a massive control panel. All 6 of his pseudopods pressed against different readouts in what looks like some kind of meditation pose. The noise is even worse down here. There's the beatboxing wail, plus a new grinding sound, and something that goes tick-tick whoosh on a loop. Hey Glorp, quick question, Jake says. Why is the coolant flowing backwards? Glorp's gelatinous body ripples with what might be indignation. The coolant is flowing in the traditional direction as specified by the original engineers of the stellar fortune. Right, but it's literally flowing away from the heat source and toward the cold side. That's not cooling. That's just moving liquid around for fun. The system has maintained stable temperatures for 3 centuries. Jake walks over to another panel and points. Okay, what about this? You've got 3 separate power regulation systems all doing the exact same job. They're fighting each other. Look, this one's trying to increase power while that one's trying to decrease it, and the third one's just sitting there confused. Redundancy is the foundation of reliable engineering, Glorp says, but his voice has taken on a slightly defensive wobble. This isn't redundancy. This is just chaos with extra steps. Jake keeps moving through the engine room, and it gets worse with every panel he checks. There's a critical pressure valve that's being held in the open position by what is unmistakably a fork, an actual dining fork, wedged into a piece of equipment that probably costs more than Jake's entire home planet. Is that cutlery doing load-bearing work in your engine? That fork, Glorp says with great dignity, was installed by Chief Engineer Blortax in year 132 after the original valve actuator achieved spiritual transcendence. It has served admirably ever since. The valve actuator broke, and you fixed it with a fork. We prefer the term adaptive engineering solutions. The afternoon maintenance ritual begins. At 1400 hours sharp, Jake watches in horrified fascination as Glorp, Threndak, and 3 other crew members gather around the engine core. They're chanting, actually chanting, and Threndak is waving what looks like incense over a fuel processor. Oh, great engine, source of our velocity and keeper of our trajectory, Glorp intones. We offer you this tribute of respect and ask that you continue your benevolent operation. Are you praying to the engine? Jake asks. It's not prayer, Threndak says stiffly. It's a time-honored maintenance protocol. You're literally asking it for benevolence. The manual is very clear about the importance of positive crew-engine relations. The ritual takes 6 hours. 6 hours of chanting, incense waving, the ceremonial checking of gauges in a specific order that has nothing to do with their actual importance. And at one point, Glorp does what can only be described as an interpretive dance around the coolant system. Jake's engineering degree is crying somewhere deep in his soul. When it's finally over, the engine is making all the same noises it was before, plus a new clicking sound that everyone determinedly ignores. Well, Glorp announces with satisfaction, another successful maintenance cycle. All systems performing within acceptable parameters. The engine immediately makes a sound like a gong being hit with a sledgehammer. That's new, Pip observes from the doorway, clutching her datapad like a security blanket. Completely normal variation, Glorp insists, though he started sweating more profusely, which for a gelatinous creature is really saying something. Jake backs slowly out of the engine room, his brain screaming at him in the voice of every engineering professor he's ever had. Don't touch anything, they said. Just follow the protocols, they said. The ship's been running fine for 300 years, they said. Yeah, and Jake's pretty sure it's been running fine the way a car with 3 wheels and no brakes is technically still moving forward. Momentum's a hell of a drug. That night, lying in his bunk and listening to the creative symphony of mechanical distress echoing through the hull, Jake stares at the ceiling and tries to convince himself it's not his problem. They don't want him touching anything. They've been very clear about that. He should just collect his paycheck and let the ship continue its slow journey toward inevitable catastrophic failure. The engine makes a sound like a burp mixed with a death rattle. Jake sighs. He's going to do something stupid, isn't he? Yeah, he definitely is. At 0200 hours, Jake. He decides he's just going to take a quick look. Just a peek. A professional assessment. He's not going to touch anything. He's absolutely not going to fix anything. He just needs to see exactly how bad it is so he can sleep at night without worrying about spontaneous engine detonation. That's all. Very reasonable. Totally professional. He creeps down to the engine room with his toolbox, and the door slides open with a hiss that sounds way too loud in the quiet ship. The engine is still making its various concerning noises, but quieter now, like it's muttering complaints in its sleep. Jake pulls out his diagnostic scanner and starts taking readings. Okay, he whispers to himself. Let's see what we're working with here. The readouts make him want to cry. The coolant system isn't just running backwards. It's running backwards through a loop that somehow circles back on itself 3 times before actually reaching anything important. There's a power coupling that's vibrating at a frequency that should have shaken itself apart decades ago. The pressure valve with the fork wedged in it is actually creating a dangerous buildup in the secondary chamber that's being vented directly into, and Jake cannot stress this enough, the crew quarters ventilation system. You've been breathing engine exhaust, Jake mutters, for 300 years. And nobody noticed. How are you all not dead? He looks at the fork. Just the fork. If he adjusts that one little thing, the pressure normalizes, the venting stops, and everyone stops slowly poisoning themselves. It's not even really a repair. It's just removing a piece of cutlery. That doesn't count as touching something, right? That's more like untouching something. 5 minutes later, the fork is out, the valve is operating correctly, and Jake has somehow also adjusted 3 nearby pressure sensors, because they were right there, and it would have been weird not to fix them. Okay, he says, looking at his hands like they've betrayed him. Okay, that's it. That's all I'm doing. Just the one thing. Well, 4 things, but no more. Except now he's looking at the coolant system, and his brain is screaming that it would take maybe 15 minutes to reverse the flow and add a proper routing bypass. And if he's doing that, he should probably recalibrate the temperature sensors, because they're reading about 40 degrees off. And that power coupling is right there, and he's got a damper in his toolbox that would stop the vibration completely. 2 hours later, Jake is elbow deep in the engine core, humming to himself while he rewires a control circuit that's been installed upside down. And he means literally, upside down. Someone bolted it to the ceiling when it was clearly designed to be on the floor. He has no idea how it was even functioning. It's like the engine is held together by spite and the universe's unwillingness to let something this stupid actually fail. Just one more thing, he keeps telling himself. Just this last thing and then I'm done. But every fix reveals 2 more problems. The 3 redundant power systems. He consolidates them into one properly functioning system and reroutes the extra power to actually useful places, like maybe the shields that have apparently been running at 60% capacity this whole time. The computer system running on what looked like hamster wheel technology, turns out it's literally just a really inefficient processing loop that he can optimize with about 30 lines of code. He finds a cooling fan that's heating instead of cooling. Not just failing to cool, actively blowing hot air into the system. It's been installed backwards. For 3 centuries, this fan has been making everything worse, and the engine has just been compensating. He flips it around and the ambient temperature drops 15 degrees immediately. There's a fuel mixture valve that's stuck at 30% when it should be variable. Jake unsticks it. There's a plasma regulator that's regulating the wrong plasma. He fixes it. There's a diagnostic system that's been reporting errors to a display panel that was removed in year 73. He reroutes it to an actual working panel. He's so focused on tracing a particularly baffling set of crossed wires that he doesn't hear the door open behind him. Doesn't notice the lights coming on. Doesn't realize he's been caught until a voice that sounds like Jello, having a panic attack, screams, "What have you done?" Jake spins around, wrench in hand, to find Glorp in the doorway. The engineer's gelatinous body is quivering so hard he's practically vibrating out of phase with reality. Behind him, Captain Threndak appears, antennae fully extended in alarm, and Pip is already crying softly. "Oh," Jake says, covered in engine grease and holding about 6 different tools. "Hey, so, funny story. You're touching it." Glorp wails. "You're touching the engine, the sacred engine, the perfectly calibrated engine that has run flawlessly for 300 years. Okay, first of all, flawlessly is a very strong word. Jake starts. But Glorp is already oozing toward the control panel, pseudopods flying over the readouts. The pressure readings are wrong. The temperature is wrong. The power distribution is completely different. You've destroyed everything. Everything. Actually, if you look at the efficiency ratings, Jake tries. Efficiency ratings don't matter when the entire system is compromised. Glorp shrieks. Captain Threndak's mandibles are clicking, and what Jake has learned is extreme agitation. Technician Morrison, I gave you one instruction. One simple instruction. Do not touch anything. In my defense, Jake says, you also hired me to do maintenance, which is kind of contradictory when you think about it. Pip has her datapad out and is frantically typing. I'm logging this. For the investigation, after the explosion, I wanted on record that I knew this would happen. I specifically said I was seeing bad omens. There's not going to be an explosion, Jake says. There's always an explosion when humans touch things. Glorp sobs, literally pooling on the floor in distress. Alarms start blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flash. Somewhere, something goes woo in a very official-sounding way. The rest of the crew starts stumbling into the engine room in various states of sleepwear and panic. And Jake stands there, wrench still in hand, looking at the engine that's now running smoother and quieter than it probably has in centuries, and thinks, well, this is going to be hard to explain. The conference room at 0300 hours is not where Jake thought he'd be tonight, but here he is, sitting across from Captain Threndak, Glorp, who's still quivering, Pip, who's stress-molting feathers everywhere, and about 6 other crew members who all look like they've just witnessed a murder. Emergency crew meeting is now in session, Threndak announces with the gravity of someone declaring war. Technician Morrison has violated Protocol 7-314, subsection Gamma, unauthorized modification of primary systems. I improved them, Jake says. You desecrated them. Glorp wails, slamming a pseudopod on the table, which makes a wet slapping sound that undermines the dramatic effect. Okay, desecrated is a really intense word for basic maintenance. Threndak's antennae are doing this twitchy thing that Jake has learned means he's trying very hard not to lose it completely. Do you have any idea what you've done? That engine has operated using the exact same parameters for 300 years. 300 years of documented, verified, optimal performance. And you, in a single night, have altered systems that you couldn't possibly understand. I understand them better than you do, Jake says, then immediately regrets it because Glorp makes a sound like a squeaky toy being murdered. The arrogance, Glorp sputters. The sheer hubris. Those systems were designed by the finest engineers in the galaxy. Every pipe, every valve, every circuit has a purpose. Yeah, I'm sure the fork had a real important purpose. The adaptive solution implement was a critical component. Pip is furiously taking notes, muttering things like, human admits to removing critical components, and defendant shows no remorse. Look, Jake says, trying to keep his voice calm. I know you're all panicking, but if you just look at the diagnostics, we are looking at the diagnostics. Threndak interrupts, gesturing to a display panel, and they show that every single reading is outside of normal parameters. Temperature down 15 degrees. Pressure readings completely altered. Power distribution unrecognizable. This is catastrophic. Those readings are better. They're different, which means they're wrong. Jake takes a deep breath. He's dealing with people who've been doing the same thing for so long that they've forgotten why they're doing it. Okay, let's just shut down the engine and do a full system diagnostic. Check for damage. Check for failures. Then you'll see, shut down the engine? Glorp looks like he's about to evaporate from pure anxiety. We can't shut down the engine. Do you know what happens when we shut down the engine? The ship stops. The restart sequence takes 48 hours. And that's if everything works perfectly, which it won't, because you've broken everything. I didn't break anything, I fixed. But Threndak is already standing, all 6 legs planted firmly in a stance of absolute authority. We're shutting it down, immediately. I want a full damage assessment before this ship suffers a core breach, because a human couldn't follow simple instructions. The crew files down to the engine room like mourners at a funeral. Glorp is literally leaving a trail of nervous secretions. Pip is praying quietly to something she calls the great nest in the ped. Sky. Someone hands out safety goggles like they're expecting an explosion. Initiating shutdown sequence. Glorp announces mournfully, reaching for the controls with a trembling pseudopod. The engine powers down with a smooth, gentle decline that sounds nothing like the usual grinding, clanking chaos of their normal operations. Even the shutdown sounds better. Jake catches Pip noticing this. her head cocking to one side in confusion. "Running full diagnostics now," Threndak says, pulling up the main display panel. The crew gathers around, waiting for the readout that will confirm Jake's destruction of their perfect system. The numbers start coming in. Engine efficiency, 140% of previous optimal levels. Fuel consumption, down 32%. Heat waste, reduced by 47%. System stress indicators, all in the green for the first time in the ship's logged history. There's a very long silence. "That can't be right," Glorp whispers. "The readouts must be malfunctioning." He broke the diagnostic systems too. "Run it again," Threndak orders. They run it again. Same results. They run it a third time using backup diagnostic tools. Same results. They pull up the historical comparison charts, and it's undeniable. The engine is running better than it ever has, significantly better. "But," Glorp says weakly, "but it was already optimal. That's what optimal means. You can't be more than optimal." "You can when you started from terrible," Jake mutters. Threndak is staring at the readouts like they've personally betrayed him. His antennae are drooping in what Jake is pretty sure is existential crisis. This isn't possible. We've had the finest engineers in the fleet maintaining this vessel. Generations of trained professionals following established protocols. Yeah, and every single one of them just kept following the manual without questioning whether the manual was any good. Jake walks over to the display and starts pulling up. "Schematics. Look, your coolant system was running backwards. I reversed it. Your power regulation systems were fighting each other. I consolidated them. You had a fan heating when it should have been cooling. I flipped it around. This isn't complicated stuff. This is basic engineering that somehow everyone forgot because you were all too busy treating the engine like a religious artifact to actually maintain it." "The fork," Pip says quietly. "Was the fork actually doing anything important?" "The fork was slowly killing you all with engine exhaust." Glorp makes a sound like air escaping from a balloon. He oozes over to a bench and puddles there in defeat. 300 years. We've been doing it wrong for 300 years. "The manual," Threndak says, and his voice has lost all its authority. "The manual was written by Master Engineer Thornak himself. He designed the Stellar Fortune. He was a genius." "He was an idiot who installed things upside down," Jake says, then softens a bit because Threndak looks like his entire worldview is crumbling. Or maybe he was a genius who got rushed, and then everyone after him just assumed everything was intentional. One of the other crew members, a lizard-like alien Jake hasn't been introduced to, raises a claw tentatively. "So when the engine has been making that screaming sound every morning, that wasn't supposed to happen?" "No, that wasn't supposed to happen." "Oh," the lizard says, "I always thought it was singing. The universe has a funny way of making sure your mistakes go public at the worst possible time." Jake learns this at 0600 hours when Fleet Command starts blowing up the communication channels, wondering why the Stellar Fortune is suddenly outrunning every other ship in the sector. "Fortune Actual, this is Fleet Control." A very confused voice crackles over the comms. "We're showing your velocity at 15% above your rated maximum. Please confirm your readings. Are you experiencing a specs for medaller malfunction?" Captain Threndak stares at the communication panel like it's grown teeth. Then he looks at Jake, then back at the panel. His antennae are doing complicated gymnastics that probably mean something, but Jake's too tired to figure out what. "Fleet Control, this is Fortune Actual," Threndak says slowly. "Our readings are, correct. We are operating at increased efficiency due to, He pauses, looks at Jake again, makes a clicking sound that's definitely distress. "Routine maintenance. Routine maintenance increased your output by 15%? Fortune, that's not routine, that's revolutionary. Fleet Command wants a full report. What did you do?" There's another very long pause. Jake can actually see Threndak wrestling with his pride, his training, and the fact that he's going to have to admit that a human fixed something the entire fleet has apparently been doing wrong for 3 centuries. "We, adjusted some parameters," Threndak says finally, which is, possibly, the biggest understatement Jake has ever heard. "What parameters?" "Fortune, every ship in the fleet uses the same engine configuration. If you've found an optimization, we need to implement it immediately across all vessels." Glorp, who's been listening from his puddle of despair, suddenly goes very still. "Oh no. Oh no, no, no. They're going to ask for details. They're going to want to know exactly what we did. They're going to find out that we've been running our engines backwards for 300 years. "Not backwards," Jake corrects. "Just, catastrophically inefficient." "The entire fleet," Glorp wails. Every ship, all of them, running the same terrible configuration because we all followed the same terrible manual. Pip looks up from her datapad, feathers standing on end. The Galactic Engineering Council is going to have a collective breakdown. Do you know how much they charge for certification? I have 17 certifications that are apparently worthless. They're not worthless. Jake tries. I spent 6 years learning how to maintain a backwards coolant system. Within the hour, 3 more ships contact them, then 7. By mid-morning, it's like the entire fleet has suddenly noticed that the stellar fortune is leaving everyone in its cosmic dust. The communications panel is lighting up like a very confused Christmas tree. And then Fleet Command sends Admiral Krelthax. Personal visit. Unannounced inspection. Jake knows he's in trouble when Threndak turns a color that insectoids probably shouldn't be able to turn. This is fine, Threndak mutters, clicking around the bridge. This is completely fine. The Admiral will arrive. We'll explain that a human we hired 3 days ago completely revolutionized engine efficiency in a single night, and that'll be fine. Totally fine. Not career-ending at all. Meanwhile, Glorp has apparently progressed through the 5 stages of grief and landed somewhere between acceptance and obsession. He's following Jake around with a datapad, asking questions at a rate that should be physically impossible. But what about the secondary plasma conduit? Have you looked at the secondary plasma conduit? It makes a humming sound. Is that bad? That's bad, isn't it? How bad? Can you fix it? How would you fix it? What about the tertiary backup systems? We have 17 backup systems. Do we need 17 backup systems? You definitely don't need 17 backup systems, Jake says. Glorp makes a note. Reduce backup systems. What else? What else is terrible? I need to know everything that's terrible. That's going to take a while. I have time. I have so much time. 300 years of time that I wasted not fixing things. Pip intercepts Jake in the corridor, looking significantly less panicked than usual, which is somehow more concerning. I need you to look at the navigation system. What's wrong with the navigation system? It takes 4 hours to calculate a basic route. Jake blinks. 4 hours? For a computer? The manual says complex calculations require time for proper processing and verification. Pip, a good system should do that in about 4 seconds. She stares at him. One of her feathers falls out. 4 seconds. Maybe less. I'm going to need a moment, she says, and sits down right there in the corridor. Jake finds the navigation computer and nearly has an aneurysm. It's running every calculation 3 times, checking each result against a database of pre-calculated routes from year 70, and then waiting for manual verification before proceeding. It's not a navigation computer. It's a navigation bureaucracy. 20 minutes of work later, and it's calculating routes in real time. Pip watches the demonstration and makes a sound like a tea kettle having an existential crisis. I've been sitting there for 6 years, she whispers. 6 years, waiting for calculations. That could have been instant. In fairness, you didn't know, Jake offers. I'm a trained navigator. I should have known. By noon, the entire crew is having a collective breakdown. Someone discovered that the artificial gravity is set 15% too high, which explains why everyone's been complaining about joint pain for decades. Someone else found out that the water recycling system has been filtering things in the wrong order. The food synthesizer has been operating on corrupted flavor profiles since year 128, which explains why everything tastes vaguely like sadness. Jake is standing in the middle of the ship, surrounded by crew members, holding various pieces of equipment, and asking if it's supposed to do that, or meant to sound like that, or always been that color. When Admiral Krelthax's shuttle docks, the Admiral is a Thoraxian, same species as Threndak, but about twice the size and radiating an aura of authority that makes everyone stand up straighter. She clicks her way onto the bridge, looks around at the crew's guilty faces, and says, "Someone want to explain why this ship is suddenly making the rest of my fleet look like they're standing still?" Threndak opens his mandibles, closes them, opens them again. No sound comes out. Jake sighs and raises his hand. "That'd be me, Admiral. I fixed some stuff." Admiral Krelthax's antennae do this slow, deliberate sweep that Jake interprets as either deep interest or preparation for immediate execution. It's 50-50 at this point. "You fixed some stuff," she repeats, her voice flat enough to iron shirts on. "Yes, ma'am. And by some stuff, you mean you took an engine configuration that's been standard across the entire galactic fleet for 3 centuries and just, decided it was wrong? I mean, it was pretty obviously wrong," Jake says, then catches Threndak's horrified look and adds, With respect, Admiral. Krelthax walks over to the engineering display and scrolls through the diagnostic data. Her antennae twitch in ways that Jake can't interpret, which is probably bad for his continued employment. Or life. Also bad for his life. Coolant system running backwards. She reads aloud. Power systems fighting each other. Critical valve maintained with dining utensil. Cooling fan installed in reverse orientation. She's quiet for a long moment. Then she makes a clicking sound that might be laughter. 300 years. We've been doing this for 300 years. To be fair, Glorp offers weekly. The manual was very specific about not deviating from established protocols. The manual, Krelthax says, still staring at the screen, was apparently written by someone who had no idea what they were doing. She turns to face the assembled crew. How many of you, at any point in your careers, thought something seemed wrong but didn't question it because the manual said it was correct? Every single appendage, pseudopod, wing, and claw in the room slowly raises. Right, Krelthax says. So we've all been complicit in the galaxy's longest-running engineering disaster. Excellent. The Council is going to love this. She focuses on Jake. Technician Morrison. You've been here how long? 3 days, Admiral. 3 days. And in 3 days you've increased engine efficiency by 40%, improved fuel consumption by 1/3, and probably saved the fleet millions in operational costs. She pauses. Why didn't you follow the manual? I did read it, Jake says, but then I looked at the actual engine and realized the manual was describing a completely different reality. So I went with the engine. Revolutionary concept. Observing the actual equipment instead of blindly following documentation. Krelthax's mandibles click in what Jake is now pretty sure is amusement. Captain Threndak, I'm commandeering your technician. Effective immediately. Technician Morrison is promoted to Fleet Engineering Consultant. He's going to visit every ship in the fleet and fix whatever disasters we've been calling optimal. Performance. Thank you, Admiral, Threndak says, sounding relieved that this isn't ending in court-martial. Don't thank me. Your performance review is going to be fascinating reading. Hired human. Told human not to touch anything. Human touched everything. Human was right. The Academy will use this as a case study in what happens when protocol supersedes common sense. Glorp oozes forward nervously. Admiral, about the engineering certifications. Are they, still valid? That's a question for the Galactic Engineering Council, and frankly, I'm looking forward to watching them squirm when they realize they've been certifying garbage for 3 centuries. She looks around the bridge. Anyone else have questions? Comments? Confessions about other catastrophically inefficient systems? Pip raises a wing tentatively. The life support feels a bit warm. Is that, normal? Jake closes his eyes. Please tell me you're joking. It's always been warm, Pip says. We just assumed it. Was a design feature. You know, for species that like tropical climates. Show me the life support system. 5 minutes later, Jake is staring at a thermostat that has, and he cannot emphasize this enough, been installed completely backwards. Cold means hot, hot means cold. The entire fleet has been running their environmental systems inverted for 300 years, and everyone just accepted being slightly uncomfortable all the time. How, Jake says to nobody in particular, have you people conquered space? Determination, Threndak offers. And a lot of redundancy, Glorp adds. 17 backup systems worth of redundancy, Pip chirps. Admiral Krelthax watches Jake flip the thermostat around and reset it to actual correct parameters. The environmental system gives a happy little beep, and cool air starts flowing properly for probably the first time ever. She's quiet for a moment, then says, Technician Morrison, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer. Honestly. Yes, Admiral? How much of what we think we know about engineering is completely wrong? Jake considers this. Thinks about the backwards coolant and the upside-down circuits and the fork, and the 17 unnecessary backup systems. Thinks about 3 centuries of intelligent beings following terrible instructions because nobody thought to question them. I'm gonna say at least 60%. Maybe 70. Fantastic, Krelthax says dryly. The Galactic Engineering Council is going to absolutely love that. She turns to leave, then pauses. Oh, and Morrison. Next time you find something catastrophically wrong, maybe mention it before fixing it at 3 in the morning. Saves everyone a lot of panic. Noted, Admiral. After she leaves, the bridge is quiet except for the gentle, proper humming of correctly functioning systems. Threndak settles into his command chair, which is probably more comfortable now that the gravity isn't 15% too high. So, he says, eventually, about that human tendency to break everything they touch. Yeah, Jake says, grinning. Turns out we're actually pretty good at fixing things. It's your stuff that was already broken. Glorp has stopped putting on the floor and is actually standing upright, which Jake has learned means he's feeling better. I have compiled a list of 473 additional systems that may require your attention. 473? It's a big ship, and apparently everything is terrible. Pip looks up from her navigation console, where she's watching routes calculate in real time with something approaching joy in her eyes. I've been running scenarios. At our new efficiency levels, we can cut standard routes by 20%. 20%! Do you know what this means for delivery schedules? That we've been wasting everyone's time for 3 centuries? Jake offers. Exactly. Somewhere in the distance, another ship in the fleet contacts them asking for guidance on engine modifications. Then another. Then 5 more. By the end of the day, Jake has a consultation schedule that looks less like a job and more like a crusade. You know, Threndak says, watching the communication requests pile up. When I hired you, I expected you to do basic maintenance and not cause problems. How's that working out for you? Captain. Threndak's antennae droop in what Jake has learned is the insectoid equivalent of a resigned shrug. The fleet admiral has personally commended our initiative. We're being held up as an example of innovation and adaptability, and our efficiency ratings are the highest in recorded history. He pauses. I hate that you were right. I'll try to be more wrong next time. Please don't. Apparently, we need someone who's willing to ignore 3 centuries of terrible advice. Threndak pulls up a ship-wide announcement channel. Attention all crew, this is your captain speaking. Effective immediately, if anyone notices. Something that seems wrong, stupid, or maintained with cutlery, report it to Technician Morrison. We are apparently relearning how to engineer things. Jake leans back against the console, listening to the ship hum with proper, efficient operation, and thinks about how he came here expecting a boring maintenance job on a prestigious vessel. Instead, he's accidentally exposed the galaxy's longest-running engineering disaster and become the guy who proved that sometimes the manual is just really, really wrong. His toolbox sits beside him, and he pats it affectionately. 3 days in, and he's already revolutionized fleet operations. Give him a week and he'll probably accidentally invent warp drive or something. The engine makes a soft, satisfied sound. Not a scream, not a grind, not a concerning wobble. Just the smooth, steady hum of machinery that finally, after 300 years, is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Hey, Captain, Jake says. Just out of curiosity. The weapons, those work correctly, right? The silence that follows is extremely concerning. Define correctly, Threndak says eventually. Jake picks up his toolbox. You know what? Let's just add that to the list. Right after the 473 other things. Glorp oozes over with his datapad, already taking notes. I'll schedule you in. How does next Thursday work for completely revolutionizing our tactical systems? Yeah, Jake says, grinning. Yeah, Thursday works. And somewhere in the Fleet Command headquarters, Admiral Krelthax is probably explaining to the Galactic Engineering Council that a human fixed their entire fleet in 3 days, and the only thing that broke was their pride. Turns out, when you tell a human not to touch anything, you better hope your stuff actually works. Otherwise, they're gonna touch it, fix it, and make you look ridiculous in the process. Humanity, indeed. Yeah.